Welcome to this week's episode of Sussex Sport Weekly podcast. I'm Matt Poe, and this week I'm joined by Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford and Steve Bone, who covers all things sport for our newspapers in Sussex and online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Crawley Town have discovered their itinerary for the 2023-24 League Two campaign. We'll take a look at the big dates for the Reds and dissect the club's Carabao Cup and EFL trophy draws. We'll also have the latest from Sussex's Vitality Blast campaign, the Sussex Cricket League, and we'll pick over the bones of England's heartbreaking defeat to Australia in the first test of the 2023 Ashes series. But as mentioned at the top of the podcast, Crawley Town have learned their 2023-24 League Two fixtures, and they will begin their campaign at home to Bradford City on Saturday, August the 5th. The Bantams finished 6th last season, losing to eventual playoff winners Carlisle in the semis. What do you make of that start for Crawley Town, Mark? A tough opener, or will the Reds be buoyed on by a boisterous home crowd?
Well, I think it'd be both. It is very much a tough opener. It's not that long ago, actually. It was Good Friday when they played them at home last season, and it was 0-0, and it was quite a feisty affair. I think Mark Hughes was kicking off, and there was a couple of sending offs, and yeah, it was quite a feisty one. So it's good. That's going to be fresh in the memories of everyone who was involved that day. So, but the Crawley fans, they will get behind Scott Lindsay and the team. Scott Lindsay said yesterday, when I spoke to him, that he can't wait to get back and hear the fans, because he feels he built a real connection, probably more than WAGMI, but we won't go too far into that, with the fans. So he's looking forward to them really getting behind the team. And it's the first time in 5 seasons, I think it is, that they've had a home game to start off with.
Oh, right.
I mean, last year it was Carlisle away first game. I think they've had season before was Hartlepool, I think, possibly. So they've had some long trips first game of the season. So it's nice to have a home game. I was chatting to Alan and Pat Harper from the GH away day travel, who organised the coaches for away fans. They were all gearing up for it to be an away day on the first day of the season, looking forward to it. And because they did a live event at Crawley Town yesterday where they revealed the fixtures. Scott Lindsay was there to do a Q&A, and the genuine shock on their faces when they got a home game, first game of the season, because it actually coincides with Pride weekend in Brighton, and they assume all the police are going to be down in Pride, so they think give Crawley an away fixture because it'll be easier. But no, they're at home, and yeah, Bradford, they're a team that we'll get onto it, but how tough this division is. But they're one of the teams who think they should be getting promoted this year, or certainly be looking for the playoffs. So it's a tough opener, but they're at home. Both teams will have new players. They'll probably have new systems, etc., and all that. So yeah, it'd be a hard one to predict. But if Crawley can get something from the opening game, it'll be a real boost for them.
Well, you mentioned tough games. The Christmas period looks, I think, particularly tricky for the Reds. They take on Wimbledon, Gillingham, MK Dons, and Scott Lindsay's former club, Swindon Town. Crawley fans and Scott Lindsay in particular must be looking at their lips at that set of fixtures, Mark. All local games against club who seem to have got a bit of needle against the Reds.
Yeah, it's quite a friendly, certainly travelling wise. I think it's I can't remember which ones are the home games or which ones away, but I know they're away at Gillingham at the first game on Boxing Day. Sorry. And I know that's a game, Scott Lindsay said yesterday that it's a game that he really looked forward to. I said to him, what's the one away game you're really looking forward to? And he said Gillingham, because I think his dad played for them, or his granddad was involved with them. He's lived in the town for 30 years, so he knows the club really well. And he's looking there, and he said, I'm looking to go in there on Boxing Day and get him 3 points. So, but we know Gillingham have spent a lot of money this year. They set towards the end of last year as well, mainly with Crawley Town taking Tom Nichols and Glenn Morris, etc. So, but yeah, AFC Wimbledon, they're going to be a team that will probably be in the lower half with Crawley Town. Not to be too negative with Crawley, but it's a tough division, as I've already touched on. MK Dons, they're going to be looking to go straight back up. Swindon, I think they're going to be another team that struggle this year. They're going to be in the lower half as well. So, and it's against Scott Lindsay's former club, like you say. So it's a lot of really, good, tasty fixtures, but not too much travelling over that Christmas period. If they could get 6 points from those 4 games, I think they'd be delighted over that period, certainly the home games. And if they can pick up a point or one of the 2 away games, that'd be ideal for them.
Any other fixtures catch your eye? I suppose the most prominent ones for most teams in League Two will probably be Wrexham, and from a Crawley standpoint, Sutton United's a nice local derby from as well. Anything else catch your eye, Mark?
Yeah, so Wrexham, it'll be the circus will come to town, won't it? Chatting to Tom Allman at the club, who's the general manager, he just said, you've got to take advantage of those days. If Wrexham's coming to town, you do everything you can to get everyone there, kind of thing, because everything will be focused on it. Sky Sports seem very excited about Wrexham being in the EFL this year. Don't know if you watched the Carabao Cup draw. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, like you say, Sutton and the AFC Wimbledon, the Gillingham ones are going to be interesting because of obviously the Tom Nichols, Glenn Morris, and then not just those, but you've got Joe Comper, Kelly Durham, all behind the scenes. Salim Gazer guys, who was there before at Crawley, they're all at Gillingham. So it's there's a lot of connections there. So I think that's one. But yeah, Sutton's always the closest game. Notts County, they're playing Notts County home and away on Tuesday nights, which is an interesting one. So Tuesday nights are always good fun at Crawley Town. So Notts County coming, I think, will be a good one. It'll be because I think Wrexham and Notts County, even though they've just come up from the National League, they're going to be two of the favourites to go up. For obvious reasons, they've got a lot of money behind them, and I think they're spending a lot of money, so they're going to be the favourites to go up. But you've also got, like Scott Lindsay said yesterday, you've also got all the teams that were involved in the playoffs that didn't go up: Bradford, Mansfield, Salford, Stockport, and then you've got MK Dons, Accrington Stanley, Morecambe, Forest Green. All came down. They all want to be bouncing back up. So there's a good 12 or 15 teams there that could be thinking we should be promoted this year. So it's going to be very competitive. Unfortunately, I don't think Crawley are going to be one of those teams. But you never know. Scott Lindsay, they've got the right man in charge. It's just whether he gets the backing or not. But I know we're going to talk about transfers and that in a bit. So,
well, yes. I was going to ask you on the Scott Lindsay front. Do you think Crawley Town having a proper pre-season under Scott Lindsay, do you think that will be a massive benefit to Crawley Town, or do you think
absolutely.
The sheer strength of the division means that no matter how good their pre-season is, they will kind of have to adjust their expectations a little bit? Because there are a lot of teams in there like Salford, Wrexham and Stockport and Gillingham obviously have got quite a lot of cash. So how do you see it going at this early stage?
Yeah, so I think, like you say, the pre-season is going to be vital. He's got 7 games, I think. The big one obviously being Crystal Palace at home, and it's just before Crystal Palace go off to America for their pre-season tour. So they're thinking it's going to be a good Crystal Palace side, so that'd be a good test. But it's interesting they're playing teams like Bromley and like that, because Bromley obviously have been up there in the National League for the last few seasons. They won the FAE trophy the day Littlehampton were at the FA Vars final. So they've got some good games, and it's a real I think Scott Lindsay really needs to hone what his team is going to be, what style he's going to play, and I think we'll get a big indication of that, certainly in the Crystal Palace and Bromley games. So games like Haybridge Swifts, Three Bridges, East Grinstead, we'll see a lot of trialists, I think. But it's going to be interesting. But it's very difficult to see Crawley. I think they'll have a better season than they did last year, results-wise, but I can't see them competing for the playoffs. And I hate saying it because I want to be positive for them. But I mean, every time I've spoken to Scott Lindsay in the last 3 days, he's talked about all those teams, the teams that have come down, the teams that have come up, and all the teams that were competing last year. And then you add Gillingham into that mix, who have strengthened and all that. It's going to be so tough this year. It's such a tough division.
Well, meanwhile, Crawley have discovered who they'll face in this season's Carabao Cup and EFL Trophy. The Reds will go to League One out for Exeter City in the first round of the Carabao Cup, while Scott Lindsay's men have been drawn against Sutton, Charlton and Aston Villa under-21s in Group B of the Southern section of the EFL Trophy. What do you make of those draws, Mark? Do either of them set the pulse racing?
No, move on. No. No, I mean, Exeter away, he just couldn't get a more horrible draw.
First competitive away game of the season as well.
First competitive away game, and then on the following next Saturday, they go to Salford away. So, Bradford at home, Exeter away and Salford away. It's not a particularly pleasing start. But I mean, if they can get something at Exeter, who knows? That could be something that boosts their season if they can start. Because Scott Lindsay said they've really got to focus on improving their away form this year. Home form, they only lost 1 game under Lindsay towards the end, and that was against Carlisle, who eventually got promoted, as we know. So I think the home form will be okay. It's just focusing on that away form. But Exeter away, it's just, I don't know. He'll say they'll want to win every game, but I don't think it will be a huge loss if they do lose. I don't think they'll take it to heart too much. And the EFL Trophy, there's some nice games there. Charlton, Sutton. whether it's a nice game at Sutton or not. It depends who they get at home, because they'll have Aston Villa at home. They beat them 5-2 last year in the same competition. And I remember that game. It was a really good game, and they absolutely battered them. So it'll be interesting to see that. But it's who they get away out of Charlton and Sutton to see who goes through there. But again, that's a competition. If they have a poor start to the season, it's not a competition Scott Lindsay's going to care about. I can't imagine it will be that. And they'll want to win. They'll want to do well in the FA Cup when that comes round, and that and maybe get through a couple of rounds. But nothing in that draw excites me. With the under-21s, you want an Arsenal, you want a Tottenham, you want something like that. Aston Villa, not particularly exciting, although they had a good season in the Premier League, didn't they? But not excited at all by any of those cup competitions. So sorry about that, everyone.
Well, that's fine. Steve Bone, you support a team who is taking part in the EFL Trophy, Portsmouth. Is there any value to the competition, or would you quite happily see it binned off?
I only get interested when my team get to the final.
And they have been there a few times.
Call me a fair weather fan. I went to the 2019 final between. I should admit my allegiance. I'm a Pompey fan, as some will know. Pompey v Sunderland was the 2019 final. I'd never been to an EFL Trophy game before that. The final was brilliant because it was a full Wembley. Two clubs who really wanted to win it. And we're going for it. Pompey won on penalties, which added to the sort of theatre of the day. But I'd struggled, and a lot of people struggle to get interested, especially in the group stages. I mean, when you get to the last 16, the last 8, you start to think, well, Wembley's a possibility. And for any team in League One or League Two, getting to the final is something. It's a great day out and a chance to lift a trophy. But I think the group stages are a hard slog. I think managers would probably be quite happy not to have to play those games. Players, not a lot in it for the players. I suppose for young players, it's a chance to get picked in the team and show the manager what you can do. But you're never going to get big crowds at those games. And I think if you were looking to thin out the fixture list a bit, that would be the obvious contender to go, really.
Do both of you or either of you think that having under-21s in the EFL Trophy kind of undervalues the competition or undermines it?
Yeah, I think it complicates it a bit, doesn't it? I think it's a little bit patronising to the League One and League Two teams,
definitely,
to say to them, you're going to play a team from Aston Villa, but it's only the under-21s that can be bothered to come down and play you. I know the League Cup and the FA Cup give Crawley, for example, the chance to play Aston Villa or whoever. But I just think the under-21 teams, they don't play any games at home, do they? It just seems a bit of a token gesture to put them in it. And I don't really know who it helps.
Yeah, no. Imagine, you're an Aston Villa under-21 player and you've got to go to Crawley on a Tuesday night. It doesn't inspire you, does it? And then to get battered 5-2 like they did last year, I remember it. They weren't impressive at all. Enough.
Probably doesn't set their world alight, does it? The prospect of travelling all the way down to Crawley on a Tuesday, does it?
No.
Yes. Also on the Crawley front, the Reds have announced their first summer signing. They've brought in former Reading and Feyenoord midfielder Liam Kelly from Rochdale, who were relegated from League Two last season. The 27-year-old made 38 appearances for Dale last season, scoring once. Would you make of that, Mark, a good piece of business for the Reds?
Yeah, it's good to see them signing somebody who's got experience. I mean, typically when a signing like this happens, you get the opposing the fans from the club that he's come from, saying, "Oh, good, glad we got rid of him," whatever. And that's what happened with Rochdale yesterday. But there was a few Reading fans that went on and said, actually, he's a good player. He was part of the team that got them third in the Championship a few years back. Then he went, Yapstam took him to Feyenoord, where it obviously didn't work out for him in that.
No.
But it looks like a really good piece of business for Crawley, I think, just because it is a bit of experience. Because we've seen too many times Crawley get these young players from academy sides and stuff in the last couple of seasons, and just hasn't really worked out. Scott Lindsay yesterday said he was a big fan of him. He had him on trial at Swindon when he was there in his first season when he was assistant manager with Ben Garner, and he said they kind of wanted it, but he didn't quite fit in there. So he's obviously somewhat a player that he's been interested in. So he's apparently good at box to box. He can knit the play from the back to the front and that. So it looks like it could be a good bit of business for Crawley, but yeah, I'm waiting for the next question now.
Well, as you alluded to, Crawley can never have nice things without something going spectacularly wrong for them. They have also said goodbye to James Tilley, which I think did come as a bit of a shock to us, Mark, because we first saw it as a rumour that he'd be joining Wimbledon. We thought, no, this can't be right. But yeah, the winger has joined League Two rivals AFC Wimbledon after 2.5 years at the Broadfield Stadium. As I said, I don't think any of us foresaw this happening, Mark. How big of a blow is Tilley's departure, and what has the reaction been from the Reds fan base? I'm sure they've taken it incredibly well.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to talk about the reaction because I can't repeat anything anyone said. But it involved a lot of expletives aimed mainly at the owners. WAGME just saying it is a genuine shock. James Tilley for me is on paper one of their best players when he's on form. He is one of the better players in the division, I think, because he is so dynamic. He attacks. He's a good finisher, powerful, good dribbler of the ball, and that really good. He makes things happen when he plays. But on the other hand, he did miss a lot of games last year. He played 25 games. He started 25 games, should I say? So he had a couple of injuries. He didn't appear that much towards the end of the season. I think he missed about 11 games in the second half of the season. I might have got that wrong. But so the few injuries there they've had with Tilley, but he is a really good player. And if you were going to pick because Scott Lindsay's repeatedly said that he's going to have to get people out before he gets people in. They've got a squad of 22 at the moment. He wants a squad of 25, and that includes 3 goalkeepers he wants. So that's 22 players. So, yeah, but of all the players that you thought they might get rid of, because they're obviously Jake Hazen-Tyler is still part of the squad. Kwesi Appiah is still part of the squad. 2 players we've I've continually said they will probably leave. But yeah, James Tilley was not one that I saw. But I imagine he's on a decent wage. He's former Brighton. He's very highly thought of. So maybe this frees up a bit of money for them to bring in a couple of extra players. So it might not be a footballing decision. It might be just a financial decision, because if anyone's read the minutes that were finally released from the March meeting between the CTSA and owner Eben Smith, they were asked, when we appointing a CEO? They simply said, we can't afford a CEO, and that's in the minutes. So they obviously need money. And someone like James Tilley, I imagine, would have been one of the better paid players at Crawley. So this obviously will free up some cash to maybe bring in 1 or 2 more. So this is what Lindsay exactly was talking about, having to get rid of players to bring players in. And yeah, this is obviously part of the many plates that are spinning that Scott Lindsay talks about. But yeah, genuine shock. It could be a big blow, but one man doesn't make a team. So exactly. Scott Lindsay gets in 2 players who are more effective and play 40 games in the season. Will Crawley fans forget about James Tilley and what effect he might have had this season? So only time will tell. But the actual news of him leaving, a genuine shock.
Do you think that, you kind of alluded to there, do you think it was a case of Lindsay's hands being tied, or you also mentioned the fact that he didn't play much towards the end of last season, or do you think Scott Lindsay just went, well, we coped without you before, we can cope?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It could be that. Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine him saying, right, I want this player, and then WAGME or whoever's making the decisions says, okay, but then you need to get rid of this player, and this player if you want to do that. And that might have been part of what. There's many. Lindsay's kept using different analogies, spinning plates, too many cogs in the machine kind of thing, and all that. And so there's lots of things going on there, and I think it's going to be, this will be the catalyst for new signings coming in. But because it's like you just said, they announced literally at 4 p.m. they got this new signing, and all the fans were like, yay, finally a signing. There were some people were saying, oh, it looks like a good signing, blah blah blah, and then literally an hour later, James Tilley, arguably one of their better players, is leaving, and it's just like you give with one hand, take with the other. So hopefully this will be the catalyst now that they will be able to bring in more players, and then you'll see other players go like Jake Hazen-Tyler, Kwesi Appiah, and who people are expecting to leave, and it won't be so much of a shock. So hopefully this will be the one shock, and then WAGME can start doing things that help turn the fans in their favour.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Changing gears, it's very tight at the top of the Sussex Cricket League Premier Division after the latest round of fixtures. Just 17 points separated top of the table Cuckfield from fourth placed Horsham. This week saw East Grinstead, who are now second in the table, move a point behind Cuckfield following a 7-wicket home win over the league leaders. Preston Nomads, meanwhile, leapfrogged Horsham into third after a convincing 100-run victory at the Lions. It looks like we've got a very exciting title race on the cards this season, Steve. Do you think these four teams will continue to trade blows throughout the season, or do you think one of the quartet will eventually pull away and announce themselves as the champions-elect?
Well, it's very open at the moment, isn't it? You could even go down to Three Bridges in fifth and say, actually, they're not that far behind. And we're actually not even halfway through the season yet. No. We've had seven weekends. Yeah, I think it kind of seems even earlier in the season in a way, because the first two weekends were pretty much washed out. So a lot of teams have only played 5 games, 11 to go for most of them, I think. And as you say, there are 4 teams there, all very close to each other. A couple of the teams there we would have expected to be there. Cuckfield in particular, I don't think many people would have expected them to be in that top 4. You might have expected Roffey, who are actually bottom, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. You might have thought that they'd be making up that top 4 rather than Cuckfield. Hard to say. You hope from a sort of competition point of view that all 4 and maybe Three Bridges as well keep going and take it to a good sort of 3 or 4 way battle for the title on the last day. There's no team in that top 4 that haven't lost a game yet. Everybody has lost at least one game. So there's maybe a bit of lack of consistency there as well coming into play. Hard to say. Most people would probably think that Cuckfield might sort of fade away a little bit as the season goes on. But who knows? They're up there now and playing very well, batting well, bowling well. So an exciting second half of the season in prospect, definitely.
We mentioned there at the bottom of the division, Mayfield, Eastbourne and Basement Club Roffey all suffered defeats. The Boars are still winless after 7 games, but trail second from bottom Eastbourne by just 7 points. We discussed it last week, Mark, but are we any closer to understanding what's gone wrong at last season's champions?
Not really, no. I do think the one player that I think I mentioned him briefly last week is Jazz Bassan, who spinner they had last year. He was at Burgess Hill the year before, took a load of wickets in Division 2. They got him last year, and he was good bat. I think he won a game for them with the bat as well as ball, and he was their top wicket taker last year. And he's now gone back to a home club in Kent, I think, Bexley Heath maybe. But yeah, they just seem to lack on the bowling front. Well, bowling and batting. I watched the highlights of their game with Three Bridges this week, and they got 4 early wickets. They had veteran bowler Lee Harrison bowling for them. The youngster Lewis Shivnarine was playing, and that. But they just didn't. After they took those first 4 wickets, they just didn't look penetrative. And Joe Walker and Milo Price, and then Aaron Brown at the end just took them apart and saw them. Well, I say took them apart. There was only a couple of overs left, but they just guided them home. And it's from the highlights, it like seemingly with ease. So there was just no penetration with their bowling. And again, they only got 226 now. They had a good start again. Nick Greenwood, who their overseas player, looks impressive. He hit 100 against Horsham early in the season. He got a 50 on Saturday. But you look at their batting lineup in there. Theo Rivers again. He's there at the top. You've got Johnny Phelps, Usman Khan, who's capable of taking any tack apart. But Matt Davis wasn't playing on Saturday against Three Bridges, so that was obviously a big loss there with their captain. But it's a difficult one to put a finger on why they're struggling so much. And they've huge one this Saturday. They've got Eastbourne at home on Saturday, and it's a must win for both sides. So you'd favour Roffey at home against Eastbourne, because I umpired Eastbourne on Saturday, and they had a thrilling game with Bognor, and they were in the driving seat for so long, but then Bognor just somehow took the wickets at the end to win it with over to go. I was speaking to Jacob Smith, the Eastbourne captain, afterwards, and he just said they just got into a habit of not knowing how to win. And sometimes that just happens. You get in yourself. Scott Lennon was brilliant, hit 100, but he couldn't just lead the team, couldn't get the team over the line. The last few wickets just fell, and yeah, Bognor were crazy celebrations from Bognor at the end. It's like they won the league, but it is really tight down there. I mean, I still think, I keep saying it, and it might be wrong, but I still think Roffey will get out of it. I think they at one point, at some point, they will just click. But they seem to have less consistency in their team selection. Like I said, Matt Davis has missed last week. Over the last few seasons, you look at Roffey's starting lineups, they've probably used 15 players in about 3 seasons. And contrasting with Horsham, who this year have had quite a consistent team. In previous seasons, because not their own doing, because they've had so many Sussex players. They hadn't been able to pick the same team, and that's why Horsham went down to Division 2 and then they got back up. But now they've got a consistent team. They're doing well. So maybe that's got a lot to do with it. They just haven't got their consistency in their team selection. So that was a really long answer, sorry. And I rambled a lot there. But watching Bognor on Saturday, they've got the fight. I think they do. I think Bognor will be safe. They've got some good players as well. Taylor Jaycox bowled really well on Saturday. And Ryan Maskell, if he just didn't play a stupid shot at the wrong time, he could score tons of runs. And he knows that. But yeah, I think looking at it, I would predict Mayfield and Eastbourne to go down. But if Roffey go 2 or 3 more games without winning, then obviously they are definitely in the conversation. But yeah, I think Steve's right with Three Bridges. They could sneak into that top 4 with a couple of extra wins. Their overseas player, Fawn Parks, this year, I've heard a lot of very good things about him. I've only seen him on the highlights, but he takes wickets. He's a brilliant fielder and he's scoring a lot of runs. But worth mentioning Harry Finch as well. He hit third 100 on Saturday for East Grinstead and absolute quality. So, yeah, no, it's an interesting league and it's going to be a really both ends of the table. I think the only team that you wouldn't talk about either winning it or going down is Middleton. And, yeah, middle is the sort of the key part of their name, I think. But, yeah, no, interesting division.
So after 7 games, chaps, who are we predicting to win it and who are we predicting to go down? We'll start with you, Steve.
Well, that's putting us on the spot. I just wonder if Preston Nomads might come through and be the strong team to win it. Very good win against Horsham last week by 100 runs. You know, not many teams bowl Horsham out for 150 odd. They were a little bit inconsistent last year, but I think if I had to go down the bookies and put money on somebody winning it, it would be them. But I hope. Well, I mean, Horsham have had a good season so far. That was a real setback for them last weekend. You got Chris Nash in there as president now. They've got a lot of good things happening there. I think Horsham in time will win it again, but it may not be this year. Maybe too much to ask this year. At the bottom, wouldn't go far away from what Marcus said, Mayfield and Eastbourne. I think Roffey, you know, we get reports from Martin Reed each week from Roffey, from the Roffey camp. And although they've been losing, each week there are positive signs for them. You know, they're not getting too down about it. I just wonder if maybe the washouts at the start of the season wrong-footed them a bit. They were ready to go that first weekend and then they didn't play for a fortnight and a couple of cup games that they were a bit unlucky in. But I think they'll get out of it. I think they'll end up in mid-table. And that doesn't leave many other contenders down the bottom, so it's going to be tight. Well, worth just saying as well, Division 2 is a little bit odd as well, because you've got Worthing at the top, who have been straight up from Division 3 West and are doing really well. And you've got Brighton and Haywards Heath down the bottom, in the bottom 3, who you would have expected to be at the top. So it's a topsy-turvy season in those top divisions all round, really. Something to do with the dodgy umpires, I think. Maybe. Naming no names.
No, of course. Preston Nomads, they're a dangerous side. It's funny because they lost a couple of players. Dan Phillips, who was been captain for years, scores lots of runs for them. He moved to Billingshurst, and when he left, there were rumours in the winter that quite a few of them left. But actually, they've recruited really well, and yeah, they're a dangerous side, and they're capable of beating anyone on that. But if East Grinstead can put their strongest side out, they should win it. I mean, their batting lineup is ridiculous. If they've got everybody, you've got Harry Finch, Will Adkin, Tom Haynes, not Sussex Tom Haynes, obviously, other Tom Haynes, Tom Hinley, Leo Camish when he's available. It's just an incredible. That would look good in a county second 11 batting lineup, and then the bowling: Lewis Hatchett, Brad Hatchett, Sam Rattle, Andy Barr, who bowled really well against Cookfield. Actually, I think it was his spell that sort of won East Grinstead the game before Harry Finch's 100. So yeah, no, I think East Grinstead, if they can keep that side together and put their strongest side out each week, they should win it. But yeah, Horsham, I think, yeah, maybe like Steve said, it has come a little bit early, but they've got some good players there. And again, they're capable of beating anyone. So, but I'm going to go for East Grinstead to win it. And yeah, Eastbourne and Mayfield, as I previously said, to go down.
Well, we'll see if your predictions come true at the end of the season. We'll hold that with bated breath. Meanwhile, Sussex Sharks have just 3 games to go in their 2023 Vitality Blast campaign. The Sharks sit third from bottom in the Southern Group after taking 4 wins from 11 games. Starting with their game against Hampshire Hawks, Brad Curry enjoyed a Blast debut to remember last Friday. Curry, who earlier took 3 wickets, took a stunning catch on the boundary to save a 6 and claim the wicket of the Hawks' Benny Howe. Sussex went on to win the game by 6 runs, but Curry's catch has widely been touted as one of the best the sport of cricket has ever seen. Could you tell us a little bit more about the catch, Steve, and where do you think Curry's catch ranks amongst the sport's best?
It was a staggering catch, and I've watched it so many times since just to I keep thinking, oh, he's not going to catch you this time, but he does every time. Funny that. I saw I think it was the Vitality Blast Twitter account tweeted something along the lines of "Stop what you're doing. We've just seen the best catch ever in cricket." Not that they were getting too carried away, which made you look at it, and it was a staggering catch. The Howell shot was going for 6, a clear 6. It would have been somebody in the crowd looking to get behind it. And Curry made about, luckily he's left-handed. He was going to his left. He made about 10, 15 yards and leapt off the ground and just held onto it. Even stopping the 6, if he'd stopped it and not caught it, it would have been a great bit of fielding. And that was on his Blast debut for Sussex as well, having earlier taken 3 wickets. It's a great way to start, isn't it? The problem is then trying to do that in every game afterwards, live up to the reputation. But every week and almost every night that there are Blast games on, we see fielding like this now. You see some amazing fielding that even 5 years ago you wouldn't have seen. We see a lot of these fielders doubling up to stop a 6 and that sort of thing. Some great catches and some great boundary stops. So it's you're almost waiting for the next catch that is as good as Curry's to come along. But great way for him to announce himself and to make himself difficult to drop. But with Paul Farbrace as well. So hopefully we'll see a few more such feats before the season's out.
Yeah, yeah, it's all right. Yes, I got a text from Steve Bone on Friday night, which I'm never happy with out of hours. But I was coming on the train back from London, and he just said, "Have you seen the Curry catch?" And I was just like, "Oh no, I haven't." So I looked it up and I watched it. And I was like, "Blimey!" So I got Mandy and Noah with me, my wife and son, and there was a couple of other people as well. Somebody we bumped into we knew who's a cricket fan as well, and I said, "Watch this catch." And everybody was sort of looking around, and just the gasp when he took it, kind of thing, was just like on this train, and you could see other people going, "Oh, what are they watching?" kind of thing. But it was that kind of catch. It was amazing. But it wasn't as good. The one I'm just about to talk about wasn't as good as Curry's catch. But I don't know if you remember the catch James Kirtley took for England against India at Lords. I remember doing it as the back page of the Eastbourne Herald at the time. It was a one-handed, full-length diving catch, and at that time, everybody was saying, "Oh, that's the greatest catch ever," kind of thing. And we had the back page lead: "Is this the greatest catch ever taken?" So it's interesting that we've got 2 Sussex people that are talking about with the greatest catches ever. So,
well, fast forward to Tuesday, and there was less good news to be found. The Sharks fell to a 6-wicket home defeat against the Kent Spitfires. Post-match, England Sussex quick Tymel Mills said the Sharks generally have been poor in the Blast this season. The 30-year-old pointed to a combination of injuries and the absence of Sussex's overseas players as to why Sussex have struggled in the competition this year. Would you agree with Mills' evaluation of the Sharks' T20 campaign, Steve?
Yes, hard to disagree, really. It's the second year in a row that it just hasn't worked out for them. And as he's said himself, it's not just one factor. There have been some poor performances, but they've been a bit unlucky with injuries. A couple of the overseas guys haven't been available, which is what happened. I think last year it was that they signed overseas players who then literally weren't here for the whole of the campaign. They lost Rashid Khan, for example, for quite a few games. This year it's tended to be injuries. Shadab Khan has missed a few games and has been in and out of the team and hasn't perhaps don't performed as well as you might have hoped. McAndrew's been in and out of the team as well. And I think they lost about 4 in a row quite early in the campaign, which just leaves you on the back foot then. Having said that, there are signs, that some of the sort of homegrown players and some of the younger players are good T20 players. And, if you can just develop that, then and keep them together in years to come, then Sussex could be a force again. It's almost like they're having to sort of regenerate. They've lost Luke Wright and they've lost Laurie Evans and Phil Salt and Chris Jordan and people like that. They've lost a lot of big names. You have to remember that, and it's just taking a little bit longer to replace them than the fans would have hoped for. I think mathematically, as we're speaking now, they can still finish in the top 4.
All right.
And get through, but it's very unlikely. You'd need them. Sussex would need to win their last 3 and hope that about 3 other teams will sort of lose more than they win. So it's unlikely. I think you look into next year, and hopefully it'll be a better campaign next time around.
Well, you speak of some kind of green shoots of recovery, but Thursday evening saw Harrison Ward lead Sussex to a comfortable 7-wicket win over Gloucestershire. The 23-year-old smashed 51 from 27 balls and dominated a match-winning opening partnership of 83 with Tom Clark as Sharks chased down a victory target of 141 with 6.4 overs to spare. Although you have said that they are mathematically still able to do it, I think we're assuming that their goose is cooked in a way. But would you say that with virtually out of the running for the knockout stages, do you think that's allowed Sussex to play with a bit more freedom and without the burden of any pressure?
Yeah, I think it has actually. Yeah, it's always the way, isn't it? When there's nothing resting on it, you see players playing to their true talents and playing with a bit more freedom. And a number of different players have stepped up with bat and ball. It was Harrison Ward last night. Ali Orr early in the campaign before he got injured was another one who looked in good touch. Real shame he got injured because he could have carried Sussex a bit further, and a couple of the bowlers as well. Curry we've mentioned. So yeah, it's always a shame when a team is pretty much out of a competition and then starts to win games. It makes you think what might have been, but I'm sure Paul Farbrace is using these games to look at who he thinks can be in that side as a regular longer term, and they're playing for their places in a way, aren't they, as well? So that's another reason why the heads aren't going to drop and they're not just going to let things peter out.
Yeah, worth saying as well, you mentioned Harrison Ward, Tom Clark there, Ali, or all players that got their grounding in the Sussex Cricket League. Just shows you what the quality of that Sussex. Harrison Ward at Preston Nomads, Tom Clark at Horsham, Ali Orr at Eastbourne. So, good grounding, the Sussex Cricket League there, talking about how competitive it is at the moment this year. Some good young players all coming through and all playing in the Sussex Cricket League. So it's important that those local games as well.